the golden jubilee year of the Mahatma Education Society that runs and manages Pillai College of Architecture. It is really indeed a pleasure that Mahatma Education Society is completing its 50 years in this particular year. And from PiCA, we are very happy to actually introduce this series in which we bring to you some of our alumni who are doing who are engaged in various kind of practices, graduating from 97 onwards till today. We have had already 3 sessions in the month of June and July, and I'm very happy to welcome you again when we resume this series today. I'm very happy to welcome today's speakers. They are Amit Arya from the batch of 95 to 2000 and Sachin Mulay from the batch of 97 to 2002. Both are senior associates at Perkins Eastman in New York and in Mumbai respectively. Welcome Amit and Sachin. We are very indeed grateful to you for accepting our invitation. Today's session is moderated by Avanish Pendharkar, and I will introduce Avanish to you very briefly. Avanish is an alumnus of PiCA, Georgia Tech, and the School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, from where he studied architecture, city planning, and urban design respectively. His work experience in America, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and India covers planning, design, and policy work on a variety of project types for public and private sector clients. He has also been a part of large-scale program management mandates, such as Qatar's FIFA World Cup program and other such events. Since 2010, Avnish has been working in India and has rendered policy and advisory services on development plans or master planning for new towns to various clients that include DMIC Development Corporation and Auric City in Aurangabad. He has been associated with CEPT University as a member of the Board of Review for past few years, and he is currently the Executive Director for the Center for Urban Planning and Policy at the CEPT Research and Development Foundation. So, Avnish, thank you also for joining us and agreeing to moderate this session. Over to you, Avnish, and you may please begin the session.
Thank you, Mrs. Dalvi. I think it's a pleasure and an honor to host this session, and host this session to be able to look at the work of two very close friends and two individuals whose work I admire quite a lot, Amit Arya and Sachin Mulay. So a big welcome to you both. The session is titled Two Trajectories. It talks about how Amit and Sachin have gone about their career as two separate trajectories and how they kind of intersect in the profession through the work at Perkins Eastman and through some of the work that they do, independent work that they do within themselves also. And you will see a lot of that today. The format for the session is I will ask Sachin to present his work first, followed by Amit, who will present his part of the work and his journey. And then we'll have the discussion about their two trajectories as a separate small presentation. The audience is free to write in their questions on the YouTube chat, and we'll as the session goes on, we may choose to kind of ask a few questions, but largely we'll deal with Q&A at the end. With that, I will now introduce to you Sachin Mulay. Sachin has been working with Perkins Eastman as a senior architectural designer since the past 5 years. Although he has a keen interest In education design, his past experience also includes designing and planning of sports complexes, IT offices, and mixed-use projects, which are spread across 14 years of experience working with Indian and international firms. Sachin did a master's from Cornell, and it was an advanced design research course. And urbanism was a prime territory of his investigation through that time. Uh, After completing his postgraduate studies in 2008, he worked with the studio of Jean Nouvel in New York and Canon Design in Mumbai before joining Perkins Eastman in early 2016. He's presently guiding the design efforts on large-scale education campuses for the Ashoka University and is also responsible for steering comprehensive project designs that uplift spaces, improve the quality of the human experience, and create value for the places that he builds for his clients. Uh, at the Perkins Eastman studio, Sachin is also responsible for carving out internship programs that revolves around nurturing interns, improving their design skills, interpersonal skills, and the development of their knowledge. Aside from all of the professional work that he does, I personally admire Sachin a lot for the quality of work that he does with his sketches. Uh, if you're a member of the Urban Sketchers group in Navi Mumbai, you will come across Sachin doing a lot of those sketches live at those events. And I think he takes a real pride in kind of making that happen. And a lot of the work that he does professionally also shows that kind of flair in the quality of explorations that he does with all of his sketches, and really helps him to communicate very well with the clients. So with that as a basic introduction, Sachin, a big welcome to you, and let's start with your presentation.
Thanks, Avanish, and thanks everyone at the Ex-Pican team for organizing this. Let me just quickly share my screen. So, as Avanish mentioned earlier, this presentation is divided into three parts. First part is when I'll present some of my work. Second is when Amit will take it further. And then in the third part, we'll talk a little bit about some of the projects, some of the competitions that we did together. So to begin with, this is the general timeline so far. So this shows my journey so far at a glance, right from graduating from Pillai's, then to the earlier years at S plus PS and Sen Kapadia, then to a completely different academic realm at Cornell, and working with a few international practices to finally land at Perkins Eastman. So all the major events that took place in between and fell together sort of like pieces of puzzle, which as I continue the journey will hopefully start making sense, more and more sense to me. For any student, I guess, where they spend their earlier years into the profession are very crucial in giving direction to the thought process and developing a positive attitude towards the profession. For me, it was working with Pinkish and later at Architects and Kapade's office. Two completely different kinds of practices, but both taught me professionalism and created tremendous curiosity and zeal towards the profession. The pictures you see here, the one on the left-hand side shows the office for S plus Space themselves, which was my first ever project. And I was lucky to have worked on the design of this and execution, and also to have worked in this office later for about few months. And the images on the right shows a few glimpses of the competition for NID that we did at the office. So after working for about 4 years in Mumbai, I went to Cornell for my master's studies. The primary theme of the MArch program at Cornell revolved around urbanism. It consisted of 3 semesters conducted at 3 different locations. One in Ithaca, where the main campus is located. Another one in New York City, where the satellite campus of Cornell is located. And the third one is Buenos Aires, Argentina. The glimpses that you see here on the screen are from the semester in Argentina, where we explored how different cities react differently to the culture of congestion and create opportunities for inventing new urban typologies. So this was a period after graduating from Cornell around 2008. This was a period of a terrible recession, but I was lucky enough to have somehow found my way into John Noel's office in New York. MoMA Tower was the first project of a grand scale that introduced me about how different disciplines collaborate amongst themselves. The top portion of this tower was under scrutiny back then from the municipal authorities as it was exceeding the height of the Empire State Tower. And the project was temporarily at halt. But meanwhile, we were working on some of the facade details uh, and also started resolving some of the envelope design further. So Nino Hewitt, with whom I was working, he was the office head and also the senior associate at John Noel's office. He had collaborated with Renzo Piano and FX Foley earlier. And of course, he had copies of the past works, some of the details, and some of the good for construction drawings and sketches, which all of that content was in the office and was one of the fantastic visual reference for me. Broad Contemporary Art Museum was an international competition by invitation, and only 5 architects all over the world were invited, which included Shigeru Ban, Christian Pausenbach, Raphael Vinoli, Tom Mann, and John Noel. I was lucky to have joined the office just a few days after the competition started. So of course, most of the initial thought process was driven by the main office in Paris. And I remember there was a small office, small process model which was sent by them, which was made in acrylic. And that symbolizes how neutral and humble the architecture was imagined to be. We had kept that model at our front desk to remind, as a reminder while we were developing the design further. I particularly worked on the sectional and program variations of some of the facade details. Um, uh, i- and generally, when you work on the architectural competitions, obviously you don't see the drawings that are detailed at this level. But particularly at this office, they relate the amount of detail with how much clarity you have about the design, which was a completely new learning for me. I eventually came back to India. I mean, obviously, because it was recession, it was really difficult to survive in US. But I was lucky enough to join pretty soon the team at Canon Design in Mumbai. Uh, I worked there for 4 years, and during those 4 years, I primarily worked on educational institutes. Uh, I particularly worked on 2 campuses for Amity University, one in Panvel, Navi Mumbai, which some of you must have seen, I'm sure, and another one in Dubai. However, the experience and teams were different in both the projects. Amity Panvel had several site-related issues. The land was tight with several restrictions on growth and a demanding program which needed an interdisciplinary campus. So we came up with a snake-like topology that you see here, which creates smaller courtyards and breathers at the same time maximizes the space available. And this academic building with the residential on the other side sits on a podium that houses all the supplementary program, which may not need natural light as much as the rest of the academic programs need. Then we started carving all these courtyards and skylights through the smaller courts to illuminate the program within the podium area itself. This undulating area that you see here on the underbelly of the building, of the main building, tries to somehow capture the mountainous topography and register its presence on the highway side. For Amity Dubai, the team in Mumbai worked with one of our senior design leaders in Boston office, who actually stayed in Mumbai to catalyze the conceptual part of the project. This project went pretty fast as the design brief was clear. We were already working second times with this client, so we were clear about what were the requirements. There were hardly any land-related issues, and the approvals also went very fast. I was only involved in the conceptual development of this project, but kudos to the execution team who delivered a very fine product. in a very short amount of time. This is the house at Pune, and this is the project that is closest to my heart. And I'm working with one of the toughest clients here because, I mean, those are my parents. It's our house in Pune, which is presently nearing completion. It's a small bungalow plot with G+2 houses on all three sides uh, and a street in front. The challenge here was about how to get nicer views on all the rooms, in all the rooms, even the one on the far end of the plot. Um, so I came up with the facade typology with with the slanted windows that will provide enough privacy, but at the same time give direct views for the front street and the smaller courts diagonally opposite on both sides of the plot. This also creates, if you see the interiors, a certain amount of play in interiors and brings in diffuse light in most of the rooms. So presently the interiors are being worked on, and this is something that I'm pretty excited about to see it get completed in next few months. So I joined Perkins Eastman in early 2016. That's now close to about 5 years. In fact, Amit had already been working here since a few years before that, and shifted to our New York office just before I joined. We have a total of 17 offices around the world, and there have been instances where almost 6 to 7 offices have been worked on a single project together at a time. What that means is that although we are spread across the globe, it is actually a network of experts offering the best practices they can on the project as required. It's a pretty young team in Mumbai compared to the rest of the offices. The average age of the staff here is about 30. The primary role expected out of me here is that of a design mentor, and the firm has given me plenty of opportunities to grow into one. Our primary expertise is healthcare and educational campuses. What you see here on the screen are the 3 campuses for AIMS that we worked on. One at Nagpur, one at Kalyani, and the third one at Guntur, all 200-acre sites. All these are presently under construction. There are several facets of the work culture here, which I think can be best understood through a project. I'm taking a deeper dive into the Ashoka University project that the Mumbai office has particularly grown with in the past 10 years. So the campus for Ashoka University is located in Sonipat, Haryana. It's a 25-acre site, and that's how the overall site looks like at a glance. This is what we refer to as South Campus, which is already operational, and the last building on the campus, which is this one, is presently getting built. The project that I'm going to show is called as North Campus, which is located diagonally opposite to this site on the northwest side of the campus. So these are some of the pictures of how the campus has been developed. There are low-rise buildings along the central court, which house academic program, and other layer behind these, which houses the residential buildings that are relatively taller. The exposed brickwork and the stone jali that you see here has formed a distinct language for the whole campus. So we worked on this site for about 8 to 9 years, and of course there are plenty of learnings from the project that is presently guiding the design of the new campus, which is the North Campus. So here are a few of the important ones. What we observed is that the architectural language of the campus eventually forms an essential part of the brand identity, and we must carry that forward in the next campus. Also, it is essential to have active landscape between the buildings with dense vegetation, as it's Haryana and it has a very hot and dry weather. Um, so, I mean, which is something we couldn't do in the older campus because of the huge basement plant below the central court. Also, we conducted post-occupancy analysis, which informed us that there is plenty of potential for passive measures that could help in energy saving and improving the health of the campus. So here is the diagram that shows 2 campuses together. So The north campus is another 25 acres of land, which is shown in yellow here, and that is diagonally that is located diagonally opposite to the south campus. And these diagrams on this side kind of some of the challenges and opportunities that guide the design of the new campus. So there is this IOCL pipeline that is cutting through the site. There is an HT line that is on the north side of the site. There are these two highways which are very noisy, and all of these in fact have their own setbacks, which reduces the overall developable land into about 60% of the whole site, which is a huge challenge. So we tried several frameworks, and what you see on the screen are three shortlisted ones. The common ideas we carried forward in the finalized variation includes a central linear code that would eventually grow towards north and south as the campus develops further, and the radial geometry that worked very well and most efficiently for this kind of site. So these were some of the initial thoughts that guided the broad level ideas for the development of the campus. As I mentioned earlier, we wanted to avoid the basement to make sure that we have enough space between the buildings to kind of create this uh, uh, landscape area in between, which is lush green, to make sure that there is a very good interdisciplinary communication between all the departments. Also, we took help of intermediate terraces to break the scale of the buildings. Some of the residential buildings are going up to 14 floors, and it's very essential to break that scale. Um, there are issues about noise from the highway, and we did some studies about using vegetation to reduce that noise at the source itself. And this is how the developed site plan looks like at present. These are the academic buildings on the east side. The residential buildings are on the northwest. There is a central green, and there is a dense green vegetation proposed towards close to both the highways. And there is a big sports zone which is near uh, the transmission lines, where which kind of takes advantage of the setback where we anyway can't build anything. As you can see in this overall 3D, the program is pretty dense for an educational campus, and the central greens and these courtyards are the only biggest opportunities to create a meaningful and vibrant landscape on the ground plane. So these are some of the sketches that take into consideration how the ground plane meets the buildings. The sketch here in the middle shows how the courtyards are connected below the buildings. And some of these sketches show how the scale of the uh, uh, open spaces, the scale of the taller buildings is broken using the shorter buildings that define the age of the open space around. And here is the first phase development. As you can see here on the here the landscape in this view continues below the buildings, forming an amphitheater. And this is the attitude that we are sort of trying to follow everywhere on all the buildings. It's very essential to see how the buildings meet the landscape, and we have been very careful about it. There's also a net zero challenge that the client has set for us. But the good thing is that we have all the consultants already on board right from the beginning of the project. And that's a very essential aspect of the project of this kind. We have regular workshops with them and with the client's team to ensure that the design is well informed in all respects. Here we can see some of the glimpses of how the rest of the phases are imagined towards the north side of the rest of the campus. Uh, this is the view of the um, this is the view of the central court lined up by tall trees and trellises on both sides. Both the academic and residential buildings communicate with each other through this central courtyard uh, that you see here. Uh, and the building you see in the end is the Students' Commons building, which is uh, opened up on the ground floor, which you can see in this view to make a better connections with the sports fields around. And this just sums up the project of where it is right now. So at a glance, this is how it was in 2011, and presently this is where it is. It has grown into a fully functional campus of liberal arts, uh, accommodating about 6,000 students on site presently. And we are hoping we can do an even better job for the future growth of the campus further on the north side. So that was about the project. And before handing it over to Amit, there are a few slides I just want to show where just to give a glimpse of what kind of um, methods we use for visual communication. So we have in-house 3D printer, which we use a lot. And these are some of the process models. And we keep doing some of these models, which informs us as well as helps us to explain things to the clients, to the consultants. Um, Also, we use VR a lot, the virtual reality, and using those kind of devices, especially in the times like now where it's pandemic and you can't go out, you can really recreate the situations that are physically seen on the site, and uh, kind of explain that to the clients as well in the real time. And of course, there are digital sketching methods, which I mean we have been using it since long time manually, and nowadays we explore it digitally. And what we have observed is clients especially are most engaged with these kind of sketches, because generally we present drawings and typical floor plans and sections and renderings which are computer generated, which is something sort of that is routine, and this kind of breaks from that path and creates a new a different method which is very well read and understood by everyone. Also, I strongly believe that thinking through drawing is a very essential and helpful habit to develop. It informs your thought process and brings a great amount of richness and novelty in the design process. So these are some of the sketches I've done in past few years with the urban sketches. Most of these are done on the spot. The sketches on top are done manually, whereas the ones below were done very recently, where we were in the lockdown. And in fact, Avanish came with this idea of doing this virtually. Uh, and that's when we started exploring this further. So with that note, this is the last slide. And with that, I hand it over to Avanish for the next.
To me, yeah, Sachin, very interesting presentation, I think, and wonderful sketches. Clearly it's very apparent that the quality of the sketches, and when you start looking at those sketches and what ultimately is built, you can
Mhm.
actually create correlations between these two. So it might be interesting at some point for us to be able to see sort of the sketch and the photograph next to each other to see how these two things kind of line up, over a period of time. But
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks.
there's one interesting thing I just thought I would quickly ask you a question about before we move on to Amit.
Hmm.
Uh, you Some of your formative work that you did back in the States, particularly through some of the competition work and work on the MoMA Tower, involved a lot of competition work that involved a lot of detailing,
Hmm.
right? And you said that was somewhat unique to the way competitions were being handled back then.
Right.
You also made another comment that said that uh, sort of brand identity of the design is an important factor
Hmm.
for any for any campus or any developer, or we see a lot of that discussion about brand identity.
Right.
Uh, how and you showed, in one of those images you kind of showed the jali work for Ashoka University, and sort of you've kind of done the entrance gateway using that, and I'm sure that
Hmm.
requires a whole lot of detailing to be able to achieve that kind of level of work. So
True.
what in your mind, uh, what's sort of the relationship between the quality of detailing and brand identity? Do these two things really matter? Or, I mean, what's the role of detailing in the brand identity discussion? Have you guys explored any of that?
Yes, that's an interesting question. Actually, particularly in the case of Ashoka University, so what happened is it's not only the jali, it's also the brickwork that they have been using since so many
Right.
years. and as you know, it needs a lot of maintenance.
Mm.
So, but it was essential for the client to continue that identity of the combination of brick and jali together. It need not be brick as such, but it's the redness and the earthen feel of the material which was very necessary, which was also continued in the jali, because jalis were made in the limestone, sorry, the sandstones. So that palette was kind of essential to get continued in. So in the recent campus that we are working on, we are proposing red stone, which comes very close visually to the red brickwork. And the jali, we are because it has become part of the identity, we are maintaining sort of the similar details in the latest campus. And definitely, I mean, the as it becomes visually for an external visitor a part of the identity, it's also for the users who are going to spend uh, lives there. There are students who are going to like who stay there 24 hours in both types of buildings. For them, the detail obviously matters a lot, and also how we, no matter how you imagine it in the renderings and sketchings, it all sort of depends on how the detailing is done on the site. And that's why, like I said earlier, to be clear, to have clarity of that kind of detail is very essential. It shows how clear you are about the idea itself.
Wow, that's interesting, because I think what I'm hearing you say is not only is the outer perception of what that architecture is as a, as material or as a piece for branding, not only is that important,
Hmm.
but is a sustained uh, uh, is the sustained identity of that particular building, which becomes an important part of somebody's life, to be able to understand how that. So the quality of the detail is what helps to identify the brand in the long run.
Absolutely.
Is what you're saying. Wow, that's I think that's very powerful, and kind of speaks to the idea of, great detailing as very fundamental to good architecture. So
Thanks.
uh, so thanks. So
Mhm.
what I want to do now is, we will take questions about this session and Amit's session in just a little bit. But before we take those questions, I want to give an opportunity to Amit Arya to present his work. Uh, so, hi, Amit.
Hey,
Good to see
Avanish, how
you.
are you doing?
Doing
Yeah,
very well. Thank you.
likewise.
So,
Let me,
just
oh, sorry,
so,
go
so
ahead.
just for everybody's sake, Amit Arya, he's also an architect with Perkins Eastman. He works with them in their New York office, and he has had 15 years of experience spanning across architecture, urban design, and landscape architecture projects. His projects feature a broad range of scales and typologies, including education, commercial, residential, and hospitality projects. He brings a well-researched approach to resolve complex design problems in order to achieve desired project goals. His design solutions are contextually driven ideas that balance client ambition with design aspiration. He has successfully led teams through all stages of design and execution of projects. As a part of the design leadership group, he participates in firm-wide discussions on the creative process as a whole. Besides this, Amit is a regular writer and is on the editorial board of the international magazine, My Livable City. He has published numerous articles on a range of subjects pertaining to the discipline of architecture and urbanism. In the past, he's worked with renowned practices in Mumbai and Boston for projects in India, China, Middle East, Europe, and the United States. Amit Arya, welcome, and we are looking forward to hearing from you about your trajectory uh, in relationship to what we're talking about.
Thank you, Avanish. Thank you for the kind words. Sachin, if you don't mind, I'll take, if
Sure.
you can stop sharing, I'll try to share my screen. Hey guys, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, Amit,
Avanish,
go on. Yeah.
okay, all right, cool. Avanish, thanks for those kind words. And Sachin, like always, a fantastic presentation. I mean, it's a tough follow-up on the kind of slides you already showed, but I'll try to do my best. For the audience, when I go through all the slides, you will see the remarkable overlap that Sachin and me have had throughout our careers, which now are like cumulatively sum up about 20 years for each of us. And even though we've never worked on a single professional project together, we have always stayed in touch and find different ways to collaborate and make our two separate trajectories meet and coalesce together every opportunity we get. So we've structured the next two parts of this presentation in that manner. But I'll start with what Sachin did, which is sort of in a nutshell, try to explain, try to no longer be stranger to a lot of people who are there on the call today. So I'm not going to go through each of the episodes of this doodle, which represents like a career on a slide, but the main essence for me, like Sachin touched upon to a certain extent, is the fact that both he and me have come to realize the fact that we are professionals who are trying to manage a career in a time when we will continuously see a recession happen. In fact, if anything, we have built our careers through the history of these recessions. And here in this doodle, these missiles falling down upon our career trajectories at various intervals sort of try to identify that as a part of reality that we've had to embrace. So in my case, I started my education in 1995 because of the influence of some key people before that who guided me towards taking the exam and enrolling into an architecture school, which of course was PiCA. College life was very eventful, but the turning point for me was when I visited Chandigarh for the first time. And when Mr. Dalvi encouraged us to take part in a competition, my first for an architecture competition, which gave us the first, as they say, fruits of labor kind of feeling. And that was within the college. So that was a great parting gift by Mr. Dalvi when I exited college and tried to search for a job. And I was very lucky enough. I've always been lucky in life is how this diagram reads to me. And I landed in Shilpa and Pekisha's office as plus PS Architects. And it's a great place to work. I recommend it highly to anybody who's in their formative years because they're great educators and great practitioners. They understand how to take everything that a new architect in the discipline can offer and sort of help them mold their thoughts a lot better. It certainly did happen for me. And not only did I get a great opportunity to work, I also found my life partner there. So that heart at the bottom sort of depict that reality. So what happened thereafter was when I, on one of our site visits of a project that we were delivering, I found myself in a car coming back to office with Pinkesh, and he just looked at me and said, Amit, you should go do your master's. And that was a very motivating talk. And I set myself targeted towards, I always wanted to go to Cornell, managed to go there, finished my course. It was a great school, a leader in architectural pedagogy throughout the world. And I was really honored to spend 2 fantastic years there and still have great associations with people in the college. After which I graduated and I found myself in Boston, working for the celebrated landscape architect Martha Schwartz and Partners, which was another terrific idea. It was at this simultaneously working for a landscape architect, an urbanist, an artist, and a leader in the industry. So there was so much that I captured and tried to absorb in the limited time I had. And then again, I found myself come back to Mumbai and out of all the options that were posed in front of me. And I joined CEPT Architects, which all of you know are sort of, it's a cutting edge practice, highly relevant in today's times of contemporary design. And again, I was amidst a group of people who really I've learned so much from, and I absorbed and sucked everything that I could as a sponge, and especially from Christopher Lee and Kapil Gupta. And I then moved on to Perkins Eastman. And as Sachin mentioned earlier in his talk, that I started Perkins Eastman. It's coming close to a decade that I've been associated with this firm. And I started in the Mumbai office, and then I moved on to New York. And then, yes, right now we're having this talk at the time when we are seeing one of the world's largest recessions unfold. And me and my team are trucking along. And hopefully 20 years down the line, this diagram looks slightly different than what it looks right now. So I've structured my talk in 3 parts. I'll take you through the early years first and the timeline which we just covered. And this is talking about everything that I did before Perkins Eastman. And the second half is when I talk about all the work that I've done with Perkins Eastman. And towards the end, I'll take a deep dive into one of the projects that I've been involved for the last 4 years. So for anybody who finds themselves in a very formative part of their career, right in the start, it's very important to join a firm that actually not only engages you without any hierarchies, without any sort of setups, pre-described notions about what you're bringing in, but actually allows you to be yourself and has the ability to hone your skills, tell you where you go right and where you go wrong, and help you make a better designer and a better individual. If there is such firm that exists, for me, it was Shilpa and Pankesha in Mumbai. I worked there for close to 3 years, and this is just a collage of the stuff we used to do there, and that's an interiors project that we delivered in Andheri, design sherrits on site, running eskeys with carpenters, master craftsmen, and then just coming up with these ideas sometimes, which not only appeal to you then. Whenever I look back at these pictures, I'm like, wow, that's what were we thinking then? But whatever it is very exciting. And then this whole tenet of using the hand, drawing, sketching, while acknowledging technology and sort of trying to create spaces is something that that was my first introduction to that kind of deep design thinking. And after when I went to Martha, I think the big change for me was the sheer scale of working on a project. So for those who don't know Martha, she's a world-renowned designer with projects all over the world. And she collaborates with some of the best designers from around the globe. For example, this is a project that I was involved with in Dublin, where we were partnering with Daniel Libeskind for this new project, the Grand Canal Square. And our task was to work alongside Libeskind, who was responsible for the building, to give a sense of placemaking to the urban plaza as to how this new development will allow the city of Dublin to connect to its waterfront. And rather than approaching it from a typical placemaking landscape strategy, we actually tried to set a very happy competition between what we did and what Libeskind was producing. And that is evident in the way we designed the landscape and the sculptural part of it, making this place a very loved plaza in the city of Dublin today. And almost everybody identifies with this place. So those were the kind of things that I learned at Martha, where coming from Pekish and then having my graduate degree over, and then immediately unleashing myself on these large-scale projects all over the world. Siri Architect, I would say, was also one of the best things that could have happened to me at that stage of my career, where the way Siri approaches every project is they ask the right question. They're a very contemporary architectural practice, known all across the world, highly respected. And at the same time, they're not just contemporary, they try to push what it means to be contemporary. They're always constantly pushing the envelope to go and take the discipline to the next level. And every project that we worked, and these are just a snapshot of a couple of projects that I was involved in, that was the sort of tenet that we followed. It was a great set of designers, and I was part of one of them. And for example, on the left bottom, you see this was a resort in Arab League, Goa, that is currently under construction. And the whole idea was that if people are going to travel from all over the world and land in Goa to a destination resort, it better feel like that. So the way we sited the building, the way it takes full advantage of the spectacular site and all the rooms look out to it, is in itself a testimony of how we approach every single design problem and how we try to search for that unique solution which defines the work. So that was such a great sort of thing to learn in those years. And another example was how you sort of adaptive reuse program of this project in Hangzhou, China, where we were asked to convert a warehouse into an office space, which was part of a larger master plan of many different warehouses. And what we chose to do is, rather than sort of placing all that program and tightening up this whole warehouse and sort of an old building and it had to deal with all that new program, we actually spread the program out as a platform, landscape, come workspace area. and left the warehouse intact, and then created a polemic between these two structures, the old and the new. And that sort of gave a solution which created a unique place-making strategy, something that was not asked from us in the design brief per se, but that was the innovation that we brought in into our understanding of the question and the kind of solution we provided to the design. The third project that I wanted to share with you was a housing project in Pune for the Vornado Group. It never got built, but why I find it still very relevant is, as all of you know, housing is a very important question to answer, especially in Asian and Indian cities. And rather than creating a very banal solution of cookie cutter floor plates extruded all over sites, and then which don't really capture the social context of a place, we attacked the problem from looking at mixing 2 or 3 different kinds of typologies. In this case, the tower block and the courtyard. And there were, just this interplay of 2 different typologies created a very distinct neighborhood. And then we replicated it around 5 different parts of the site. And instead of looking fairly monotonous, even though we are using just 2 typologies, the sense of place that we were able to create through this was a pretty successful design strategy. So CD provided me all of this out of the box thinking, and don't just stop at what is thrown at you, question it, and come up with an innovative idea. The last of the projects from those times was actually a private commission that I was lucky to be a part of alongside 2 other individuals who I shared workspace with in the past, was this house in Goa. The reason I'm showing you this is because it was a great experience for us to every now and then we try to do that while we're working with other people and team members in the office. You tend to sometimes find that opportunity where you also want to do your own thing to a certain extent, have your own voice. And then every now and then when these projects come across, you get a chance to do that. In this case, what we did is we were asked by a couple in Delhi who are product designers, and they run their own successful practice to conceive of a house on a site that they had in Goa. And our first site visit told us exactly what was the strength of this site, which is this beautifully undulating contoured site. And our entire thrust of the project then became how to place a building that very lightly sits on this site, a house in this case. And how do you, with your experience before a house exists, how do you try to retain that and maximize it so that the site still flows in? The courtyard automatically accepts that existing condition. And the house is basically a celebration of where it sits. So it's always been a dear project. And episodes like these always what you learn while you do your own stuff, and then you come back into practice, and there's always a back and forth that you can engage with. So that was sort of the earlier series from the last 10 years. And then now I'll take it through a glimpse of just a handful of projects that I've been involved in the last 8 or 9 years. When I started with the Perkins, Eastman in Mumbai, most of the thrust of my work revolved around leading design teams in the Mumbai studio, delivering high-density housing projects all over the Indian subcontinent. So I did a lot of those kind of projects, which are all at different stages of construction right now, whether we dealt with questions of high-density urban living, as in the case of Altamount this is on Altamount Road in Mumbai, or these luxury towers that are currently under construction in Gurgaon, or a whole series of projects with beautiful clients like Godrej Properties, etc., in Kolkata, single-family homes with the Tatas in Sona, Haryana. The one thing that really motivates me about doing housing is an opportunity actually to sort of look at the design idea as not a problem of just resolving numbers of the amount of housing unit you have to fit and this, that, and the other, which ends up into a sort of commodification of the product, and rather try to maintain design intent and try to maintain a sense of social space, which when you deal with numbers of housing in India, you can very quickly get confused with, so how do you still maintain on these really large projects a sense of design intent? And And that happens two ways in housing projects, for example. Like this is a snapshot of a catalog of unit plans that we created for a project that is currently almost fully finished and occupied in Vikhroli for Godrej Trees. And here you can see an example of how the same sort of overall set of rules of how the core has to be, where the structure has to be, has to evolve and absorb different kinds of family units. So here's the smallest house that we propose, which is a one bed, and going through that entire gamut of different unit types all the way to the penthouses. I particularly love doing this because it allows you to be a sort of tool as an architect to influence urban living in India. How well you design these houses for the families who move in, who you have never seen and they will never see you, is the challenge of the architect. I love to embrace that challenge every time I get an opportunity. And then when I moved to New York, I became a part of this team in our New York office, which is basically the HES team, the Higher Education, Science and Technology. And here I would like to stress the point that no matter what people tell you, architecture is a team sport. No one person can claim complete authorship of an idea. It takes a lot of people, a lot of different kinds of people. It literally takes a village to build a building, so to speak. And this is a perfect example of that. So that's my team. We're 45 people. We're roughly about from 27 different parts of the world, 27 different countries, pardon me. And we're all architects, but then we have other specializations. So some of us are architectural designers. There are lab planners among us, interior designers, space planners, all sorts of people, technical architects. And every time we approach a project challenge, we bring the perfect team that can attack the problem in the most holistic manner possible. So on the right, you see a couple of projects that our teams have delivered in the last 3 years across, in this case, across different cities within America, whether it is a basketball support facility for Providence College or a school of nursing in Rutgers University or Stockton University, which was a bioscience center. It gives you a general snapshot and a glimpse of the kind of work we like to do. We try to keep ourselves very updated with the latest trends in education. And the projects that we get from all around the world usually come to this team because the most amount of expertise on education resides within this group, so to speak. Now I'll try to focus and zone in and take you through the process that we follow by exemplifying it on one certain project. So for the last, I would say roughly 2.5 to 3 years, I've spent a bulk of my time looking at two projects, two of the biggest projects we are currently designing and delivering the firm has ever done. These are both universities in Kuwait City. PiCA University, which is like 500,000 square meters of built-up area development, housing 4 colleges, and the Health Sciences University, which is twice that size and is currently in early concepts. Just to give a sense of a comparative scale diagram. So when you bring these two projects and you juxtapose them right next to, let's say, the Capital Complex by Le Corbusier in Chandigarh, which all of us are very well versed with in terms of scale, you can just see the sheer size and enormity of the program that we have to deal with. Even the smaller of the two universities can more or less capture the entire of the Capital Complex in it. And not to mention more amount of buildings that actually have to be delivered. So these are really daunting projects sometimes. Our timelines are extremely tight and we understand the requirement for that. But I come from that attitude and the firm allows me to think that way, that how do you still maintain design intent, whether it's a small project or project as huge as that, and how do you still deliver a product that doesn't look like it was daunted by this humongous task of just managing this design exercise. So unfortunately, I will not be able to talk much about the Health Sciences University because we have a non-disclosure agreement with our client at this point in time. So the only slide I can share is this one here, but I will take a deep dive into the other university project, PiCA. So PiCA University is basically a technical university. Most large-scale universities in Kuwait are actually owned and run and operated by the government. And in case of Kuwait, it's about 500,000 square meters, and it actually is consisting of 4 colleges: College of Health Sciences, College of Technical Studies, Business, and Basic Education. So right at the offset, you got to understand that complex projects like this need very simple solutions sometimes. So when you look at the master plan from an aerial view, you can literally identify the 4 colleges as 4 very simple bars occupying the program that is required out of them. And then a 5th bar, which holds all the common facilities like the libraries, the auditoriums, what have you. And all of these 4 colleges can actually intermingle with those places. So a very simple design party organizing this large scale program. And then the rec centers are located on 2 ends of the site. The other thing is the attitude with which you approach large projects. So for example, I'll give you a small anecdote. The client had requested us that out of all the energy we consume on site, we should be able to design strategies where 18% of that energy that these buildings consume should be generated in the site itself. So we came up with the idea that, okay, we've got a whole lot of cars to deal with because students in the Middle East travel by car to the campus. And we converted all of those into photovoltaic farms. So when the project actually gets built, we will get the final readings of how much percentage of energy we were able to generate. But our intent is always to try to take a challenge and flip it over its head and try to look at an opportunity that we can create from those challenges. So the other aspect of these large-scale university projects is the idea of placemaking. Sometimes you have so many buildings on campus that are designed at the same time by the same designer. You may end up in a problem where everything looks similar or what's going on. I can't find my way around things and stuff like that. So how we addressed it in PAID is that even though from a aerial view, you see these bars as distinctly different from the other, when you walk through the campus at the lower level, everything is integrated. The experience is a series of courtyards, well-shaded courtyards and bridges that connect each of these buildings. And then the whole exploration for the students from going from one campus to the other or reaching out to the main common facilities is not really getting out on the road, walking on the pavement and then coming back in. Rather, the entire ground floor is beautifully integrated across the entire campus. The other thing is we focus on a couple of key building types. Like, for example, this is our main library building. And it sort of becomes an icon. You need a couple of icons to define such a large campus. And we used all of these common buildings to become the place markers for that place. The other aspect of this project was campus planning, of course, and not just campus planning, but campus planning in a very hot and dry climate, such as the Middle East. So our primary idea was to create a series of buildings with well-designed and shaded courtyards that became the primary experience. So you're not inhabiting buildings that are absorbing a lot of heat, but at the same time, you're inhabiting a zone which is able to calibrate and control the climate a lot better. At the same time, we understand that if so many cars are going to come on site, we don't want to create a sort of educational culture where cars dominate the student experience. So the way we design the master plan and the vehicular access is we have an outer ring road and all our cars are parked outside of it. And once you disembark and you take a bridge and you get to the college, that entire experience on the inside is entirely pedestrian. For a small college, that doesn't seem too big a task. But for a project of this scale, to be able to maintain a pedestrian-free zone right in the heart of that campus is a very successful design challenge in itself. So, and the last aspect of the project that I'll try to focus on is the enclosure design strategy. Like I mentioned before, projects of this scale, you tend to get absorbed with the management and just finishing of the project that you may end up losing sense of design if you don't really have a fantastic game plan right from the get-go. And so how we dealt with, at least in this project, is that we have two specific teams. A team does all the space planning, all the lab planning, and they actually lay out the entire college for us. And then there's a separate team which looks at the image of the building, the identity, the facade, and the architecture of the building. And it has to be designed in such a way that these two teams, we cannot always coordinate inch by inch and square meter by square meter all the time. So you have to embed a DNA in the facade itself, that regardless of how much the planning changes on the inside of the college, your facade strategy is robust, that with just a couple of moves here and there, you can still maintain the overall sanctity of the facade. So what does that mean in terms of these slides? So we essentialized the overall facade strategy into 4 key modules. Those modules where you need a lot more visual clarity between the inside and the outside. Those modules that are going to face the southern and the heated environment, and they need to be shaded, and they need to have some sort of granulation in this design scheme, so that this facade does a lot of self-shading for you. They all, note by the way that they all follow the same module of 9.6 meters, which is defined by our structural grid. The third module would be a more solid module where what happens in the back is may not require a window. And in that case, you need a solid facade. Sorry about that. Then there is, of course, the general facade, where there's a 50-50 sort of scheme where you desire 50% of solidity, which is good for the Middle Eastern climate, and 50% of visual transparency. And then when you play around with all of these modules at different levels, what you get is basically a facade strategy that becomes at the same time continuous, but allows you to have all of those special moments that you want. And the program from the inside speaks to the design strategy on the outside. So this is an example. This is a rendering of one of the colleges and its north end building with, and you can see the whole photovoltaic panel right on top, which goes and becomes the shaded environment in the courtyard. The last point that I want to touch upon is, which I think should be something that we can even bring up in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to answer all questions, is the fact that on projects of this scale, in a time when we practice architecture today, a lot of things have come into existence. The way we use technology has changed dramatically. In the next 5 years, there will be entire projects that will be built around the world where not a single sheet will be printed on paper, but just 3D models will be shared between the architect and the contractor on site. And that 3D model will be the total evidence of the drawing set. In such a drastically changing environment, because technology allows you to do that, there are still some fundamentals that you have to keep in mind, which is how do you maintain design intent? So in our case, the way we have structured our team is we have designers like myself who envisage and conceptualize the project on platforms like Rhino or SketchUp. And then we have teams that we work with, which help us document our design intent on Revit. What I usually find is when the designers are separated from the technical guys, there's a break in design intent. What we've tried to do in our teams is we have created a continuous feedback loop. All the designers are supposed to understand how Revit works, and all the Revit technicians need to be able to relinquish full control of this thing so that the designers can get back, import, export the model at all stages of the design. So we make sure that what is being drawn at a technical stage is exactly what we conceptualize in the start. And if it's not possible, then we find a common negotiation ground without diluting the design. And then these are some examples of how we articulated the final drawings for the facade. And they look exactly like how we rendered them in the start of concept. So it's this behind the scenes constant back and forth between our teams that allows us and guarantees a product that performs the way it looked right at the start of its conceptualization. And that was all the stuff that I do in Perkins Eastman. And a lot of times when you're working in a practice, you tend to forget what's happening around in the world. Different architects, different designers have very different ways of staying in touch. For me, writing about the industry, about changing trends is a great way of engaging myself to remain contemporary and relevant throughout. So what it allows me to do is it allows me to reach out to folks sometimes, read more, research more, because my responsibility is then to understand the subject and talk about it. So it's a great personal exercise for me. And folks like Shyam Khandekar and others who allowed me to become part of the editorial board in My Livable City have encouraged that. So this is a snapshot of all the articles that have come out in the last couple of years that, and this endeavor I co-author with my wife, Bhuvna Murli. So we're the two of us together, whenever we find time, we start on a research and every now and then we publish these articles. So, well, I've written about a lot of subjects. I've written about how the resurgence of wood as a green material is the future of construction. Or we had an interview with Elemental and talked about half of a good house, their celebrated social housing design strategies, which we all know from around the world. Or how in Spain, architects are able to manage the contemporary with the old in a beautiful way. We call it the Spanish approach. So whole lot of things that you generally don't get to do in your everyday working life, but I can express myself through writing. The current article that we are both working on, which will be published in Jan of the coming year, is talking about how the post-pandemic urbanism will reflect on our ideas of environmental adaptability. I mean, we cannot have business as usual. And not only the pandemic, a lot of other signs in the world have exposed ourselves to that. So this article sort of talks about that to a certain extent. And of course, I've had the good fortune again of a lot of my work being published in various publications throughout the years. The work that we did at CERI was actually published as part of their monograph when they presented their magnum opus exhibition at Architecture Association in London. And a lot of the projects that me and the rest of the team worked in were featured here. A book that came out by Thames and Hudson in 2012, Recycling Spaces, documented a lot of the work that I did with Martha Schwartz and partners. And 3 of the articles that we actually wrote in the magazine My Livable City were enhanced and became essays that were released as part of this book last year by oral publication called Affordable Housing in Inclusive Cities. And an upcoming publication right now, which will be released at the end of the year, is Unbuilt 2, where an in-house competition that was organized in Perkins, Eastman called the NOMI, which was a center for destitute women in Bihar. And our winning entry was decided to be published by the Unbuilt folks, which was a pleasant surprise. That was the deck, guys. So thank you so much for entertaining me.
Amit, I think that was an absolutely wonderful and stunning range of work that you can kind of showed here, and 10 years at Perkins Eastman and the kind of work that you've done definitely shows. And we've got an interesting remark from Mr. Dalvi, who says that some of the Corbusian sort of influences seem to have rubbed off on maybe by design, maybe by happenstance or whatever. In some of the work that you've done, the Goa House, even some of the work that you've done for PiCA University, the shading devices, and that kind of work. But the one thing that strikes to me, and we'll come back to that as a question maybe later on, but just a quick and brief, how has your work with Martha Schwartz, who's sort of very well known for a kind of work that she does with, star architects. She herself is a big star, no doubt about that. But sort of you talked about happy competition between Martha and Libeskind. It's hard to imagine, but true if you say so. But how has that work influenced some of the design approaches that you have chosen to adopt in the work that you do? I mean, just very briefly.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I was exposed to at Martha was the fact that the quality of the relevance of landscape, I would say, because what did it actually mean? Graduating as an architect, designing buildings, but actually looking at it from the outside, what surrounds a building and the amount of influence that can have on the architecture of the piece was something that truly I was exposed to for the first time with Martha. The strength of urbanism and how the two and architecture can create a polemic that actually results in a better solution. And I've been very aware of that throughout the career ever since. As an architect, we're not just dealing with our given envelope. We're actually trying to create a relevant campus all the time. And I think those were some of the things that I first explored when I was working with Martha.
Yeah, and we've got an interesting question from Annie Diana Neelam asking, how do you essentially control the design DNA or intent through, you talked about being a part of a much larger team and, all of that, and how do you essentially control the design intent and that DNA? And while we might see a little bit of that in your next section, why don't you just quickly give a short answer to that question?
I think there are many ways in which you can go about it. Every design studio does it in their own way. In our case, the two softwares that we if I put it in the context of PiCA University, the two softwares that we were currently exploring was Rhino for design and Revit for documentation. But softwares apart, you have to have a plan of action right at the start when a project like of this scale comes to you.
Right.
It starts when the way how you break up the team, who you bring in, who adds value and who doesn't. You need a master planner for a project like this, no doubt about it. You need people who understand urban sensibility. And then you need architects who can actually deal with this scale and
Right.
not lose sight of. So you got to be looking at the minute and the macro and the micro all at once. I mean, and if I can just do a jugalbandi with the previous question, that's something that I picked up between Shilpa Pinkisha and Martha, and even Siri, which was somewhere in the middle. So for
And
me,
you
it
did
was
mention,
interesting.
yeah, and you did mention that it takes a village to, build a project, and sort of you get different people, you pick the right people to become a part of a team, and not all,
Absolutely.
you cannot have all superstars,
Yes.
I mean, there
Like
might
there's
be
a saying,
superstars in their, sorry, you might have
No
superstars in their own right, but everybody has a role, is what you're essentially saying.
Yep, absolutely. And exactly. And the team has to be structured right in the start. I mean, you write the DNA of the project when you structure the team. You know exactly where it's going to go. Then you
Yeah.
can use whatever software and you can bring whatever in. I mean, as long as your team is robust and you maintain it that way and you show some sort of consistency from start to end, you will be able to do it.
Right. So with that, I think let's look at how you and Sachin have actually done some work together, because I think that's sort of the interesting bit, because you guys have worked together. You're both part of the same farm, different offices, yet I gather that you have not really worked together on a project within Perkins Eastman, but
That's correct.
you figured out and found out ways of wanting to do that for for each other and for the love of your capabilities or abilities to kind of collaborate. So let's see what that is. So why don't you go on to the next segment, and maybe hopefully there's we can keep it short so that we can actually entertain some more questions.
Sure, absolutely. So like you said, Avnish, me and Sachin have never really collaborated on a single professional job together. But the good thing is we studied together, and I know him since then. Uh, when he graduated, and I was already in practice for some time, and I decided to leave Shilpa and Pinkish, and I was actually a visiting design faculty in Pillai College at that time. There was an opportunity to work on a competition. I was interested in working on a competition, and that actually became our first sort of collaborative project. And we've selected two projects, one at the start of our careers that we collaborated on, and one which we'll take a deep dive into, which is something we did last year together. And that'll just give the audience a sort of flavor of, like how two designers have grown from the starting, from the very nascent stages, and how we still engage with each other. Right off the bat, Sachin is a very easy designer to work with. I mean, he just, it's so easy to work with him as a proper team member, and just beat balance of ideas and things like that. And the third member, of course, of this competition was my wife, Purna Murli. And between the three of us, we created a nice jugalbandi of sorts. And in case of this competition, it was the Freedom Park reimagining and old colonial prison into a public park. So that was the task we were assigned to do. And then what we did was, at that time, we were exploring our love for, what was it, Sachin? Bernard Tschumi?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
event
Bernard
cities
Tschumi.
and all sorts of
Event
diagrams we were
cities.
looking at actually. So
Right. So,
basically, if I add here, this
sure.
was a jail which was opened out for people, and basically, like for anyone to come here and spend their whole day. Of course, Bangalore as a city has already had a lot of public areas. I mean, the open passive gardens like Kaban Park, which are mostly fenced, is what we observed. And we didn't want this to be, to go on the similar lines. Instead, we wanted to retain what's there on the site, all these existing structures, and wanted to add to it, and in such a way that to make it more like a live kind of garden. The best example, like Amit also mentioned, was these beautiful diagrams that we saw in the in this Bernard Chumi book called Event Cities, where he explains all the events as, as real architectural phenomenon. So yeah, those, I mean, you can see the influence already, like in some of these diagrams. And I don't know what I mean you think about it, but we did get carried away slightly with, uh, the way this is explored architecturally. I mean, this was, although it was supposed to be like a proper landscape competition, and that's what we heard later on from Sen Kapadia, who is also one of the jury members here. uh, Although he liked it a lot, and somehow we enjoyed, I guess, getting carried away in, doing what we enjoyed doing the most. So yeah, that
Right.
was
I mean, the interesting anecdote was that when you later on went and joined San Kapadia, part of the interview when you showed this competition, didn't he actually tell you that I've seen this before or something of
right.
that sort?
Yeah, so
Right.
there were total about 80 entries, I guess, and I guess the team members, sorry, the jury members had shortlisted about 9 members, and that's how we specifically remembered this, because he said, yeah, this was one of the shortlisted entries. So yeah, and that was a big, sort of achievement in itself for us, actually. Uh,
Yeah.
And this
And then
this
if
is
I,
something that
yeah,
you did very early in your careers, right?
that's correct.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next slide that you see is what we collaborated on just as late as last year. I mean, this was actually um, a collaboration, a three-way collaboration. There were people in New York, myself, Bobna, and Jose Miguel. All three of us work in Perkins Eastman. And Sachin Mulay from Mumbai, again, another Perkins Eastman person. And then a third friend of mine, Satish Saklani, who I had actually worked with first in Siri Architects. So a whole camaraderie of people and like-minded individuals who understand each other intuitively. So this was a competition for a national concert hall in Lithuania, in the city of Vilnius. And it's a beautiful town. And even the site was just incredible. I mean, at the first site, when you look at the competition site, it's centered around a thriving public park. It connects the old quarters of the town on all four sides. Our first intent when we looked at the project is, why would anybody want to place a building in the middle? You would rather just encourage a more fantastic landscape strategy and make a even but then within that question for us was the answer of how we react to that problem, right? So we stopped looking at it as one huge monolithic building, and these diagrams sort of suggest that we try to question the whole idea, the historical form of a concert hall. And where it sort of, even though it's supposed to be a repository for as a cultural building in the city, it excludes and includes people based on who has a ticket and can go inside for a concert and who just appreciates the outside. We tried to unbox that typology to a certain extent, break it apart, take the program, remove it, take it on the side, and then in the leftover space, actually bring in that quality of public space that could then become the connector of these landscape parks on all four sides. That was initially the four-step concept that we had for the project. And then when you start looking at the concert hall as a constellation of different buildings all connected at grade, but the landscape flows on top of it, it creates a completely different way to look at the problem. I mean, and this was sort of one of the renderings that we produced for this competition. So you're looking at it from the park on the other side, and you can clearly find your way, negotiate through all of these building blocks, and reach where you wanted to go. And at the same time, there's a concert hall business as usual. And if you're a ticketed audience, you will actually enter it from one of those building plans and circulate through all of these buildings at the lower level. And the two constituencies don't really inhibit each other's presence in the same campus. And this is another rendering from showing the main entrance area. Concert halls have a very staged sort of entrance. So you have a lot of fashion shows and things like that, and big celebrities come in. But how could you again juxtapose that entire audience with the flaneur in the city, so to speak? And in all of these images, that is what we try to impress upon the jury members, that it's a typology that has to requires more exploration. And Sachin, if you want to talk about the
Sure.
drawings that, yeah.
So here, as Amit explained, there were a lot of clues we took from the city of Vilnius, and if you see this city, like many other European cities, it has a particular style of sloping roofs and a very beautiful topography that it forms around. Also, this entire proposal sits on a mountain, And we didn't want to take away that character. Instead, we wanted to add to it and sort of continue that language into it. And we tried doing it on both planes. One is on the ground plane, which you can see on the plan on top, where if you remember those 4 roads coming together, this is where they all come together and sort of get combined into a public space which sits right below these 2 auditoriums. And if you see the roofing of this entire complex, that kind of carries forward the language of the surrounding the sloping roofs that you have as a character of the city. And we sort of also tried taking the clues for the palette, which, I mean, here if you see the stone facade, which also carries the same color that you see in the backgrounds. So some of these details were particularly very interesting to work with. And yeah, it was very enjoyable to work, in because particularly for an auditorium kind of space, it has its own technical challenges. At the same time, we were trying to balance it out with this broader picture and how it talks to the surroundings. So yeah, that was quite interesting for us to work on.
And these are some of the views of the 2 auditoriums. This is a smaller one of the 2 auditoriums, which was designed in a way so it's like an expandable space. If you needed a sort of impromptu performance area, then you could just take all of these seats, just a la NCPA to a certain extent, and the little theater, and it could become a larger performance gathering, or the more formal, large scale auditorium space where, and just a final anecdote was that it's a competition of this sort ends up bringing all the stuff that we've learned over the years, working with different people and mentors that we found along the way. And we've absorbed all the tenets that with which they go about constructing their practices. And we try to emulate it. Like when Sachin spoke about detailing at Jean Nouvel, you can see that in the way we intended to draw up all of our drawings in this competition, or the way to re-question a given brief and turn it on its head to investigate into a new idea, which is what I was exposed to in Siri. All of those things sort of form who we are as designers. And as long as you're open and you're absorbing and continuously, you are allowing yourself to grow as a designer completely. And I think, Sachin, unless you have any other words, this is probably your last slide.
No, I guess we have said a lot about it. Let's see if there are any questions or.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Much appreciated.
Thanks, everyone.
Amit and Sachin, I think this is absolutely wonderful work. I mean, the collaboration that you kind of bring together and choosing to work with each other as Picans and as professionals, I think it's absolutely brilliant. We've got, and both of you have worked on interesting campus projects. I think, Sachin, you worked on the Ashoka University. Amit, you worked on PIAT, you're working on the sort of medical campus kinds of projects. Uh, you know, the use can be whatever, but essentially they are sort of large sites and you're working on independent buildings as campuses that form a part of a campus. We've got a very interesting question from Professor Prem Goyal from the College of Engineering at Pillai. And he says that, if you look at some of the traditional campuses, like the Banaras Hindu University, for example, or some of the kind of older campus buildings, uh, they were they were centered around sort of the central administration center. You've got kind of concentric kind of buildings that actually uh, form a part of the kind of campus plan. There is sort of center of the campus kind of notion out there. So that is one type of model. The other type of model that is that you see with places like Cornell or Georgia Tech or Harvard or MIT, which are very, very urban kind of campuses, where the boundaries between the city and the campus almost is not there. The campus is a part of the city, and the city is a part of the campus, both. So, what are why aren't we adopting these forms of campuses? Why do we see what's the logic for the kinds of campuses that we're seeing today, which are uh, somewhat linear, somewhat sort of internalized. They're looking within. There is sort of a clear front door facade kind of thing. I mean, in Georgia Tech, you would not find a front door. I mean, there would be multiple places from where you would enter campus. The scale matters, of course, uh, but 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 I imagine so is Cornell. I mean, there isn't a single front door to Cornell. I mean, there is a ceremonial sort of place from where you can say that this is sort of the ceremonial front door. But over time, those campuses have evolved to become something. Any thoughts on the sort of the idea of the concentric model versus the integration of campuses with the city?
Sure.
You
So,
want to go first?
yeah, sure. So the examples that you mentioned, I guess, even Banaras University or Cornell, those are all growing from the existing network and taking clues from it and growing further, and whatever sense it makes out of it. If you see the campuses, present day campuses, at least the ones that we presented or the ones we have been working on, are all mostly greenfield sites, which were there was no like, at least in case of Ashoka, it was entirely a greenfield, both the campuses actually. So when you have such kind of a blank slate site, um, uh, you have to make it's entirely under your control, and like you have to, the only thing you can come up with is the most logical solution that can work best for that particular site. And then the only driving factors are like context, phasing, which is one more important reason why you see a more rectilinear kind of ways of campuses, and the program for the campus. For example, if you see, to give an example, if you see Ashoka that I presented, if you imagine a cross section of the campus, take any of these two campuses, you have academic on one side, you have residential on one side, clearly defined, and then there are shared programs in between, and that togetherly forms a typical phase. And then you take that and you either form a rectangle out of it, or a based on the site geometry, but that logic and the phasing is complete in itself, and then that same logic kind of ends up continuing in a linear fashion. I guess
Right.
that must be one of the reasons what must be leading to, at least from the Ashoka, I can tell. I mean, from the rest of the campuses also that I've worked on, there are similar patterns, and phasing plays a very important role because they get their funding, the clients get their funding from various sources, and the campus has to grow and evolve as they gather the funding, and also as their knowledge about how the campus wants to grow further.
Right.
So
So,
that's yeah.
Amit,
The
before you kind of respond, can we switch to, if you stop your screen sharing, then I think we
Sure.
can all be seen together. Sorry, go ahead now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just to piggyback on what Sachin already mentioned, the one thing I could say about why things look the way they look today, and I can't speak too much about the Banaras Hindu University model and things like that, but I would say what happens in America is, and why you see certain places of the world being more open and certain others is not, is our societal construct of what's private and what is public. If you look at our cities in Asia, and especially in India today, every time you do a housing project and things like that, the idea of the boundary wall is very strong. In the West, that is not the case. If you walk through New York, the biggest developments are right cheek by jowl with smaller developments, and there's no real physical boundary that separates the two. And this whole notion of mine and yours and private and public percolates in all of our thinking. So university campuses in India generally are zoned out in land use plans as a particular lot. There is no real relationship when they're actually, it comes to us in a format, at least us designers, where we already know where the site is. But there's a lot of thinking that already has been embedded in that site to begin with, which already enforces that whole logic of a very excluded campus with you. For example, in Kuwait, where I'm working right now, the context around our campus per se does not exist. It used to be sand and dunes for the last 100 years. So there is no town that you can feed off, if you get my drift. And in case of America, there's a lot of organic development. Harvard is a 200-year-old university, and it used to be a town before it became a university. A particular set of buildings came up, then others came up and things like that. And a societal construct was never that, okay, now we need to call this zone as Harvard, and that is the town. it always just kept growing organically, and that became the nature of that campus. It's a very fantastic question. I think the thing that we should think about as designers is when we are given a brief like that, like, because we are building, let's say, all of Howard at one go. The quantum of colleges that we're building at this point in time, maybe not all of Harvard, but at least 40% of the buildings, that came up over a span of 200 years. We're expected to deliver it in 10 years. So it's a daunting task. And at the same time, we don't have any clue of the towns around. So I think the point is well taken, but we've got to think more as to how these campuses still integrate and bring that whole quality of urbanity into it.
Sure, and that sort of leads me to a second question that relates to the idea of how do you integrate what I typically call as bones of the city within sort of a campus structure. I mean, your the work that you showed related to the last project, which was sort of the concert hall project. You talked about how the streets actually come in, become a part of that particular space, weave through, and allow for some of that to happen. That's a very interesting approach, which is uh, quite different from the kinds of approaches that you have used to, whether it was the Freedom Park or whether it was the interesting thing is that the competition approach is somewhat more open and inclusive. Uh, the uh, the client-centered professional approach is to be able to safeguard the client's boundaries and to be able to sort of internalize. I mean, is this something that is a conscious choice made as a professional versus somebody who's trying to kind of really explore and push out a boundary as a designer?
I think as designers, Avani, it's a fantastic question to begin with. As designers, we always have to remind ourselves, and you guys as well, that we are work in progress. We are just as good as our last project, and we keep learning, and we're just as good as the people we have worked with. We keep learning, and we keep evolving. And yes, of course, there are all challenges. Like, for example, in the competition, we were our own clients. We were our own constituencies. There was a brief, of course, but we designed the rules of engagement to that extent. And it's, I would say, it may be a little controversial, but I would say it's that sort of concept is much easily possible in European and American cities. Because again, I'll go back to the point, the understanding of what is mine and yours and public and private is understood in a very different way. So villainius could exist very easily as a concept in those conditions. But when it comes to universities that we do in outside of the non-Western world, yes. And in general, when we do work, we have to partner with clients. And our general approach is to first hear what they have to say, very importantly. And they may come with a lot of ideas about the campus. And whether you completely agree with them or not, it's a sort of slow process of negotiation to make sure that certain things that it's like Charles Correa has beautifully said once in his Gyan Prava lecture, which is like, how I worked with my government clients was that once to get what you want, you have to first give them what they want, and then they'll let you do what you want. So it's a continuous sort of negotiation of working with our clients, and it's not an easy task. I mean, because yes, we would all like to see a more integrated, well-knit educational campus, which doesn't exclude the outsider from the insider. And we are always striving for that. But the number of stakeholders involved in these large projects it's a daunting task. And
so what I'm hearing you also say is that negotiation, collaboration, and consensus are sort of the three fundamental pillars of sort of good design and good design implementation. So it's not enough to be able to just have good quality design happen. Making sure that it actually sees the light of the day depends on how well you negotiate across these three elements of a larger design process.
Absolutely. And there is no question about it. It's like you cannot be in your own silo conceiving the world. The world is made of you and a whole lot of other people. And it's how you set up the polemic time and time again. so that it's like my favorite example is, of course, I don't want to belabor on Corbusier, but for him to actually get a chance to build Chandigarh, he designed the capital of Paris, 120 times, and tried to build consensus year after year after year for his villa reduce scheme. And so it's not a new thing. It's something you have to do constantly. And you will fail a lot of times. People will not see your vision. And sometimes you'll be lucky and they will actually do it. But to have a vision for is important. And then to be open to actually take it out there and create a conversation is very important. Yes.
Well, any last words, Sachin, from you?
Uh, Amit has said it already, but like he said already earlier also, like it takes a village, and the village includes clients also, and like it does, you need them to be on the board with you. And yeah, there are a lot of stakeholders, which are, I mean, it's not just one person. There are boards, and there are other donors who, develop the buildings together. So yeah, but there is a lot of change. You can already see the the exposure of and that the clients come up with nowadays. They, I mean, we do look at these as examples, the ones that you mentioned, Cornell, MIT, and those are the examples that the clients come up with many a times, that okay, this is what we want, and then of course it will take its time to slowly get there. But if the picture is clear, if where we want to go, then that shouldn't be a very difficult process to follow.
And hopefully your the kind of sketches that you make will make things a bit more easier for them to be able to communicate and understand, how some of that actually really works over a period of time. Uh, thank you, Sachin and Amit, for an absolutely wonderful, presentation and talk. It's been most enjoyable for me, and it's wonderful to kind of have two amazing Picans doing some amazing work in two different parts of the world, yet coming in together to be able to collaborate and keep in touch. Although you do have the advantage of having of working for the same firm, but I don't think that really matters. I think you just love working with each other across continents. So that's absolutely wonderful. Uh, so with that, we come to the end of our talk, and I would like to turn it over to Mrs. Dalvi for any last words that she may want to share.
Thanks, Avanish.
Thanks, Avnish.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Avnish. It was indeed a wonderful session. It was great to catch up with Amit and Sachin, having known them from the student days. Two fellows who were close friends during the PiCA days, uh, worked in similar offices or same offices, maybe at different times. Went to Cornell, both of them on scholarship. I should very proudly say that, as their teacher, and now working with this multinational, sitting in two great cities, divided by great time difference, but still working together, even though not on the same professional project. I think it would be very interesting to see one day both of you will get an opportunity to work on the same project from Perkins, and I hope your employers are listening to this. And
Inshallah.
Yeah. We are
inshallah.
hoping the same.
And then it would be interesting to see what comes up. We really look forward to that. It was great to see your journeys, and truly the topic of today's conversation was two trajectories. It was really interesting to see two trajectories that were both parallel as well as intersecting in many ways, and really enjoyable. We greatly enjoyed going through your journeys. And thank you very much for coming here to the PiCA Alumni series, making these presentations. Thank you, Avnish, for being a wonderful moderator, and it couldn't have been better than that. So yes, we come to an end. to tonight's session, and I should not end it before actually mentioning a few people who have been, you know, who have been very instrumental in conceptualizing and looking for making this series possible. So, firstly, all the speakers, the ex-Picans who agreed to come and speak. Of course, we are very thankful to them. We are also very thankful to the entire team of certain key people in the PiCA alumni group. You know, the ex-Picans who then carry forward this message, who popularize these events and make them really successful. So we are also very thankful to them. My colleagues, Professor Kavita Sawant, Professor Neha Kode, and Professor Jinu Kurian, who is also, of course, a member of the ex-Pican. They have been very instrumental in helping to make this series possible. And lastly, the Student Council of PiCA, who is actually organizing this series. The previous council as well as the present council, I'm greatly thankful to the students for the technical support, for the enthusiasm, and their sort of continued curiosity to know about what their seniors are up to. And I'm as a professor of PiCA, of a long standing, I'm really proud of the journeys that the ex-Picans have taken. Many of them, but at least some of them we are able to bring to light through this series. So it's really something that is close to my heart. It's wonderful to see the alumni of our college doing such wonderful things, not only in their very strict professional capacities, but also as academics, as teachers, as human beings, as writers, human beings, many things. So yes, thank you so much, all of you. Thank you to all those who joined this session, not only the students and members of alumni, but also members of the faculty, which also includes faculty members from our sister institutions of Mahatma Education Society. So thank you very much for joining today. So today is 5th December, where we have resumed our PiCA Alumni Talks series. But we would again take a break because the college is now going to be involved in conducting a lot of online examinations and juries, etc. So we will meet again in the month of January with the new set of speakers, and we will tell you very soon about them. So thank you again. Thanks a lot, Sachin, Amit, and Avanish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, guys.
Right, and good.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.